Lexington, Kentucky today. Give it up for Ian McDiarmid. Come on up to stage. Come on up, sir. Have a seat right here next to me.
I forgot my charger. Greetings from the dark side.
My friends in the back, please tell me you got that, because that's the most amazing thing I'll ever have.
That's right.
Is him sitting next to me saying that, even though I promised him 10 minutes ago I will not ask any Star Wars questions. So, you said you're having a good time.
I am. It's great to be here.
Good.
First time in Lexington, first time in Kentucky. Yeah. Not the last, I don't think. Great.
Did you try some bourbon? Did you try some bourbon?
No, I'm not really a whiskey man, which is a disgraceful thing to say because I come from Scotland. But I've been trying some, wines that aren't too far from the region and so on, and they've been pretty good.
Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and get started with a couple of easy questions, and I'm going to let you guys let your freak flags fly, right? So first of all, what projects do we have coming up?
I don't know if you've got it over here yet. I just finished a television series called Britannia. I think it's available on Amazon. It's just been showing. It still is showing in London. And it's about the second Roman invasion of Britain, which didn't happen last week. It probably could happen any day. But it's all, it's Celts and Druids and Romans, and I'm king of the Celts.
Sounds good.
A Druid came my way, but I thought, well, I said no more dark side. So he's quite a nice guy, but he has family problems. He doesn't get on with his daughter, who is a fighting princess. There's a lot of those about these days, and I think we could do with a few more of them, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was my latest project.
Okay, so like I promised him I wouldn't ask Star Wars questions. You're in one of my favorite films, and it's called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Has anybody ever seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels? Yeah, all right. Steve Martin, Michael Caine, directed by Frank Oz. You got a good story about that?
Yeah, it was...
Sweet! All right.
I don't know if it's good, but it was terrific to be directed by Yoda.
That's right, Frank Oz is
Frank
Yoda.
Oz, for a change. And you all know he's a very talented, witty, funny man. So we had a good time. And the other two talented, witty, funny men were Michael Caine and, of course, Steve Martin, who wrote most of the script. Although, I think I can say this now, the writer's strike was on at the time. And so Steve was writing quite a lot of our stuff. And we were very grateful. And I met him for the first time on the first day, and he was very effusive and very friendly. He thought I was a journalist from the Times. So we got off to a very good Steve Martin situation straight away. And Michael was Michael. He's great. Michael, he's indefatigable. He never stops talking, right up into the word action, and then he segues into the dialogue. So you may be having a conversation about, I don't know, another actor or where you might be eating later on, and someone says action, then suddenly he throws the line in at the beginning of the scene. So I always had to be on my toes. And I don't drive, but I learned to drive, sort of, for the movie, and they said it's only going to be in and out of shot, it won't be a problem. So I said, okay. And then on the first day, this very sporting, very beautiful Rolls Royce turned up with two French guys, and he said, we took you for a spin around the Corniche to give you practice. I said, no, I think around the Corniche is not a good idea because, there's an ocean down there. He said, yes, but you're a driver, it'll be fine. I said, no, I've only just learned in the last 48 hours. And then they went away and killed themselves because they had this wonderful car that they thought I was going to trash. However, it was in and out of shot, and it was a bit like that every time I sort of started because I wasn't used to it. And Glenn Headley, wonderful actress, no longer with us, sadly, who was playing the leading role. And she seemed to put up with it. I kept apologizing for doing that after the take. And later on, I used to run a theater in London, and I asked her to come and be in a play, which she did, and she was magnificent. I said, I didn't think you'd come because of my driving or the lack of it. And she said, no, I loved it. I like to keep things fresh. That's my story.
Great question. All right, so this is what we do. Do you see that cube right next to you? That's an actual microphone. So what we do is, who has questions? Do you want to throw it out to the audience?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Just throw the cube, that cube. Yeah, let me show you.
Watch this.
All right, who wants them?
Oh, I see. That's right.
Yeah.
I thought it was digital.
No. Are we ready? I'm sorry, I can't pass up Lando.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hello, my name is Pods, and first
Hi.
and foremost, Darth Sidious is my favorite character of all time. So right now, I am humbled to be in the presence of my
Come
board.
on.
So my question to you is, I've heard a story where you were talking to someone, and you told them how you were going to see the Return of the Jedi with a couple of children, and you told them you were Darth Sidious. They didn't believe you at first, but as time went on, they started to see it, and they slowly started getting scared of you. I was wondering, do you have any other adorable, cute stories like that?
Well, that was an experience, because that was a young kid who lived next door to me. And, yeah, very young. And I said to his mom and dad, well, you know, we have these previews before you all get to see it. Cast and crew it was. And I said, well, I got some tickets. Do you want to come? Yeah. And so they brought along little Anthony. And he was a bit resentful. You know, it was, I don't know, Sunday morning or something. He had better things to do. And they said, no, you've got to come. It's Ian. He's in the movie. He plays the Emperor. He went, oh, yeah. So we sat down, the movie started, and this creature came on who didn't look like me at all, you know, with a made-up face and a made-up voice. And then slowly, as the movie went on, he moved seats. And then it finished, and I said, well, how'd you get on with it? Did you like it? Didn't speak to me. And then his mom and dad said, well, we're all going for lunch, and said, I'm not going with him. I said, Anthony, it's Ian. He said, oh, no, I didn't know you were really like that. So I ruined a young child's life, and, you know, not for the first time.
I was about to say, hopefully many more. All right, who's got the next question? Let's throw it to the lady. Oh, yes, sir, go ahead.
My name is Jax, and when you told Anakin you could cheat death, will you be reappearing in the new Star Wars movie? Because Snoke was terrible, and I thought you were the best villain.
Jax,
Thank you.
you just got up and dropped the microphone.
Thank you, Jax, for that very detailed, sophisticated, illuminating question. How old are you?
8.
Okay. It's a little older than Anthony was when he went through the terror experience. You're very rude about Snoke, who got sliced in two. Well, the thing is, I can just tell you on the last week of filming of Return of the Jedi, when George was trying to kill me in the nicest possible way, you probably know to go down a chute into galactic hell, you're filmed going upwards. So I was in a harness, and they jacked me up. And all that Dave had to do, Dave Prowse, of course, as Vader, was to catch me. Now, Dave was very tall, and he was in a helmet, and he couldn't really see what was going on. And so he failed to. So every time I was jacked up, I went, round the skin, and I thought, round the ceiling. I thought, well, that's an interesting way to end. And then when we eventually got the shot, I came down, I said, George, does that mean he's, and he went, yes, he's dead. I went, oh. Doesn't he? No. Couldn't he? No. So I'm afraid that's all I have to tell you. But as we know in the Star Wars universe, all sorts of things and people are resurrected. So I live in hope, but I always say, if anything happens vis-a-vis a new movie, you lot will find out before I do.
All right,
Thank you.
right
Thank
behind
you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, Jax. Right behind you, lady there. Yeah. No, that's okay.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering if any of your academic studies into psychology and human behavior affect the way you portray your characters. Yes, the Emperor, but particularly stage characters.
Because you have your master's in clinical psychology, correct?
Yeah.
I have it. Yeah, it's called something called social science, and I was studying to be a clinical psychologist. I was too scared to be an actor, so it was a sort of avoidance course. But yeah, I learned a few things, and the Emperor, of course, is an ace psychologist. I mean, in his manipulation, particularly of Anakin, you know, is up there with the best manipulators of all time. So I suppose some of those techniques were in the back of my mind. But my source material, of course, was the script, you know. A lot of people said, well, good luck. But I find because it was so clearly and simply written for the target audience, which, as you probably know, is 8 years old, it was easier for me than for the others, to overlay things onto it. And also, I had the great advantage of playing, as it were, two parts. I was the outwardly charming, inwardly hypocritical person. And that kind of dichotomy is always interesting to play from a psychological point of view. But I've always been interested in characters who have got, by one reason or another, power. Power is an interesting concept. Yeah, I'm not much interested in it myself, but I'm interested in how others use it, manipulate it, and are, more often than not, brought down by it. That's always the trajectory, and most of the parts I've played on stage, I was just thinking about it the other day, have some of those elements in it. And it's also a very interesting thing to watch in everyday society. The most recent part I played on stage was a British politician, an English politician, called Enoch Powell. He was a brilliant man, he had a terrific mind, but he made a great speech. Well, not so great for the people who suffered as a result of it, but it was very carefully constructed. And it was about immigration. And his main thesis was there were too many people in our country of Britain, and they ought to be helped to leave. Very controversial now, and just as controversial then. And this was a man who really could have been prime minister, but as a result of that speech, it became impossible. And playing the part, I got quite close to members of his family who said, well, you know, that was Dad, or, you know, that was my granddad. And of course we respected him and so on. But after he made that speech, life became very difficult for us, and also difficult for him. And he really ought to be at the top of the tree, but as a result of that, he fell, rather like Satan, I suppose, and didn't fulfill his genuine potential. So that's always interested me, and that's the latest example of how I've been able to use that.
Good question. All right, who's next? Let's throw it around a little bit.
All right.
Oh. Somebody's going to lose an eye one of these days, and I'm going to get blamed.
Oh, my name's Gabe.
Hi.
Your performance as Sidious was amazing. I just love how you do it.
Very good.
When it was confirmed that you were going to play this role, how did you prepare for this, especially having a predecessor to this iconic role?
It's interesting when you say confirmed, because when I first was involved with the series, when George first asked me to play the Emperor, it was a very brief lunchtime meeting. And the second time was a very brief meeting in a hotel. It was nice to see him. I hadn't seen him for a number of years. And I guessed it would be about the prequel, but I had no idea how I might be involved, or maybe it was just a friendly chat because he was in London. Anyway, I went to meet him at this hotel in London. He was wearing the same shirt as I last
20
saw
years
him.
later, he was wearing the same shirt?
Exactly the same shirt.
Yeah.
He probably has more than one. And he said, "Hi, Ian. Do you want a drink?" I said, "Well, a water will be fine." And he said, "Okay. Do you know anyone who wants to play an emperor?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, you can give the water back." So there I was. That was my audition and interview for part 2. And then he said, "I'm going to tell you a little bit about it." And he said, "Well, the man who became emperor starts off as a lowly politician, and everybody thinks he's quite a nice guy. He's not particularly charismatic, but he gets the job done, works very hard, for the Queen and so on." And then he told me a little bit about the rest of the movie, not much. And then he said, "There's this other guy who's darker in the background. He does this and he does that." And I thought, "Oh, that sounds like a much more interesting part than the politician." I didn't know until the first day of shooting that I was playing both of them. I thought I was a mistake on the call sheet. I thought, "No, that's not my number, and I'm not in that scene." Oh, I see. And the first scene of that movie, actually, was the scene on the balcony with Darth Maul, with Rey. And so it was great and very mysterious. And I discovered later that my Sidious days weren't attended by anyone who wasn't in the scene. And when it came to the first preview, it was the premiere, in fact, in London, and I saw Liam Neeson. He said, "You didn't tell me you were the other bastard." He's never got over it, actually, I think so. I said, "Well, I didn't really know till the last minute." But it was the thing about the Star Wars universe, it's very good to keep secrets. Because you guys and me, God knows, in episode 7, we love surprises. We love to be shocked into the unexpected. So long may the Star Wars universe preserve its secrets until the last moment.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. All right, who's got the microphone? Who's got it?
I got it over here. Ian, my name's Keith Taylor.
Hi.
This month I'll be 50 years old. First thing I ever had to do with Star Wars was in a little theater called the Strand Theater in Prestonsburg, Kentucky. They're getting ready to tear it down. And I was driving by the other day and I thought, that's where I had my first kiss and that's where I met the Emperor. And I told my mom, when I came back from the movie, she goes, and she'd bought all these action figures and all these things. And she goes, "Well, who was your favorite out of this one?" And I said, "It's the Emperor." She goes, "Isn't he the mean one?" I said, "Yeah, but he's so pimp doing it." I mean, it's just the way that you set it up. I did not know that you had a psychiatry degree, but you can, now that I'll have to go home now and watch it because you can see it, because I just got through with that class myself in college. But
right.
It's masterful how you do it, sir, and I thank you for my childhood.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm,
All right, let's pass it on to someone. Let's throw it. Let's throw it back there. Yeah.
Hello, my name's Alexis. This is off topic from Star Wars, but do you have any stories from the set of Sleepy Hollow?
Ooh, Tim Burton.
Sleepy Hollow, where to begin? Well, the gang on that, a lot of British actors who knew one another very well had a very good time. And the main object of the movie was to keep a straight face when we were in camera. Not helped by the director, Tim Burton, of course, or indeed by Johnny Depp, who I'm sure, as you know, likes to be wicked and mischievous on set. So we had lots of occasions when we had lots of fun. And it was terrific for me to play a character who was in a state of perpetual fear, rather than inducing fear in others, this poor doctor. And one day, Richard Griffiths, the late Richard Griffiths, who was a very good friend of mine, a great actor and a Broadway Tony Award winner, and no longer with us, very sadly. And he was a big man. And usually about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he would kind of drift off to sleep. And he would say, "Ian, if this happens, kick me." So, and we were all in the room once, and the particular shot was panning round all of us, I think, who were in the state of fear as a result of the Headless Horseman. So we all looked shiftily as the camera went round and round. And when it got to Richard's turn, he was fast asleep. And Tim waved at me, "Don't wake him." So we went all the way around. We were all in fear, and Richard was like that, which was really quite funny. He didn't use it in the movie in the end, but Richard never quite forgave me. He said, "You didn't kick me." I said, it would have made a row, and I think we got a better take as a result. It was full of things like that, but it was a great, fun movie to do. It had, as like many movies, it had many more, as it were, fleshed out storylines, which you didn't see in the end of the picture. But it ended up being exciting, and in the true Tim Burton, Johnny Depp mold, a winner.
Okay. Who's got the microphone? Let's throw it back that way. Yeah.
Hello, Your Highness.
Oh, right, yes.
It's an honor.
Imperial Highness, if you don't mind.
That's fair, that's fair. Amazing performance, as has been said, throne room scene, my favorite bit of all Star Wars. My question is, how did the voice come about? Like, how did that get developed?
Yeah. That's quite a story, actually. I had no idea how he should sound until I saw his face. And I only saw his face when I woke up after 4 hours makeup, looked in the mirror and screamed, of course. I thought, well, he looks like an oily toad. So then I thought, Stanislavski, how would an oily toad sound? And I thought, well, it has to be somewhere there. And also, I'd just seen a great Japanese actor perform the role of Medea, which I'm sure you realize is a woman, and he performed it really very strongly as the man he was, and the voice seemed to come from somewhere around his stomach as opposed to his chest, where most resonance is begun. So I thought of that actor, and I thought of a toad, and I read the lines, and this thing sort of emerged. And I thought, can I keep that up without losing my voice? So I did practice a bit at home, and then did it on the set. Nobody said anything, you know. They didn't go, "What are you doing?" So I just kept on doing it. And, you know, Mark was very nice. He said, you know, "I got a cough suite if it's any help." You know, but he's always very witty, Mark. And then one day, the director of the movie, Richard Marquand, British director, nice guy, good guy, said, "I've got a tape here of Clive Rebel's voice." I thought, oh, that's nice for you. You know, he's a good actor. He said, no, Clive was the voice of you in Empire Strikes Back. And if you can get your voice close to his on the takes we're about to do, maybe George will let you keep it. I thought, oh, I don't think so. I said, well, the thing about it is, I went through, I looked in the mirror, you know, and you see my face, and I think that the voice that Clive used, if he went through that experience, he would do something other than just his own voice. So that's what I'm doing. So he took the tape back and looked at me rather sort of pathetically, and I thought, my voice is now going to disappear forever. But it didn't. And we weren't, in those days, you had to revoice practically the whole film because the digital arrangements weren't as sophisticated as they wonderfully are now. So I was in a studio in the West End of London with George, and as it happened, Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy, who were along for the ride that day, and I was doing my work. And I don't know whether George, as his closest friends, had brought them along just for fun, or whether he wanted their view on the voice as well. But after the first take, Steven said, "Oh my God, you're so evil!" Anyway, from then on, the voice was set, and it's the one you've heard ever since.
It's a good story. It's a great story. All right, we've got some people behind you. We've got some people over here.
Yes. How different was George Lucas's role in the production of Return of the Jedi compared to his role in the production of the prequels?
Well, on Jedi, as I'm sure you know, he was co-director, really, with Richard Marquand. And he'd asked Richard to do it because he felt that Richard would be better with actors than he was. He's a terrific guy, and then he was really quite shy. And he also felt that he had a very good instinct for casting people. And then after that, it was up to the actors, really. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes you'd be grateful for a bit of help. And he thought, well, the kind of help that people want, I'm not always able to supply. On the other hand, he knew everything about the movie, how it was going to look, how it needed to be calculated digitally and so on when we did the prequels. So he thought originally he would only direct Phantom Menace, and then he would hand it over to other directors. And there were other directors in the frame. I shouldn't mention the names, but they're names you would all know, exciting directors, and we were all excited to think we'd be working with them on episodes 2 and 3. And then George decided, I think just for completely practical reasons, that it was going to be too complicated, because the imaginative directors that they'd thought about engaging might have taken the film in directions that his, as it were, digital geometric mind couldn't support. So he thought it would be simplest and best if he continued. And he and I have always got on really well. As you know, he has about 3 directions, which are great, perfect, and go again. And of course, the younger actors, and me too, would have liked a little more. Than every now and again, we didn't get it. But you know, when the man who's created it, who sleeps it, who has it in his blood, is in charge of all the scenes, that's the person you really want to be talking to. And from my point of view, it was great, and we still have a great rapport. As evidenced in episode 3, when we were doing the office scenes, I kept saying to him, George, it's great, I get a bigger office every time I get more powerful. Why don't I get a digital office? He said, well, maybe that's episode 70. And and he wanted them to be big because he thought that's, presumably it's easier to show that than it is to do it digitally. But then he said, we've had enough of offices when we came to one scene. And I think you're interested in the theatre, Ian. I think we should go into a theatre. And the box, we should go into the Imperial box for the scene where he ultimately seduces Anakin to the dark side. And I said, oh, great. And the great thing about that scene is, of course, you can, as it were, look at the audience, the Emperor can, and then you can turn to him. So there are always many ways of being devious and mysterious. Whereas in an office, it would look very peculiar if I suddenly looked away, when he was in the room. So that was a huge advantage in the playing of the scene. And I also realized that people used to ask me, maybe you will, is there anything good about Palpatine? And I said, no, absolutely not. He is a solid block of evil. And then I thought, no, there's one good thing. This is a man who likes theater.
All right, let's throw that around.
Hey, this may be a little bit of a short one, but I mean, I'd really like it if you could maybe say, I am the Senate in your Emperor voice.
What, say it for me one more time. I didn't even hear you.
You want me to say, I am the Senate in his voice. Well, that's an interesting and tricky one to do, because that's when he's just beginning to emerge as the monster, and he's had just about enough of Mace Windu. So he's slightly out of control before, the saber appears. And he says, I am the Senate. Yeah.
All right. Let's throw it around.
Good throw.
What's your question, sir?
I've always thought, watching all the Star Wars movies, that you took the acting to another level and brought Shakespeare to George Lucas's world. And I know your stage background, the awards, it's impeccable, your comedy background. And I always thought, what would it be like if the Emperor did a one-man show on Broadway and brought Shakespeare to Broadway as the Emperor and did say Hamlet? What would it sound like?
Right, it would sound pretty boring, I think, probably. But
have you ever got that question before?
No, I have not. The great thing about Shakespeare is he invites you to, well, go everywhere, really, intellectually, emotionally, and certainly vocally. So if it was to be or not to be, that,
All right. Enough of the voices. There you go.
Question. So in episode 3, when you were fighting Sam Jackson, But did you find those scenes more challenging because it was sword fighting than
Yeah.
other scenes?
I mean, Ewan and Hagen, of course, trained for weeks. Every second they weren't filming, they were, fighting, rehearsing the great fight routine. And they both are master swordsmen. I said to them, you should go on the road, you guys. You should just do sword fight demonstrations. And the only slightly disappointing thing about their fight in the movie is inevitably it's cut up, because we move back and forwards to different locations all the time to keep the suspense going. But of course, when they shot it, they did it right through many times, brilliantly. And every time they finished, the studio went wild. I mean, it was just, forget Errol Flynn. It was just the most, devastating piece of work, I think, in terms of swordsmanship that I'd ever seen, and most of the other people as well. Well, I had to learn to do a bit of it, didn't I? But I had a very good stunt double who took most of the work. But I did have to learn how to wave it about a bit convincingly because of the close-ups and so on. And Sam Jackson was very accommodating the day I did it with him. I think I hit him over the head about 3 times, And he said, God, I knew you were evil, but not that evil. He was very good-humored, and even though I finished him off shortly afterwards, well, I got Anakin to do my dirty work, of course. But yes, the physical side of the role was a big surprise because I thought all my force was in the fingers. And then when I discovered that Christopher, the late, great Christopher Lee, whose admiration, I've always held him in enormous admiration. And when I didn't know that he had electric lightning until I was sitting there at the premiere with everybody else. And I felt a little bit possessive. But if you have to give up your electric lightning, it's an honor to give it up to such a great actor as Christopher Lee.
Okay. Next question. Yeah, go ahead, and then let's throw it back this way. Go ahead, and let's throw it then. Go ahead. Go ahead with your question. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Yeah.
Please ask it.
Hi, Ian. Bill Sheehy with Star Wars Newsnet's Resistance Broadcast. Two-pronged question for you. So it was announced this week that Jon Favreau is producing and writing a series for Disney's streaming service. And going off of Jack's question earlier, would you be open to performing the Emperor again? And going off that point, what was it like re-entering the character for Rebels?
Yeah, well, a lot of people played the Emperor over the years, some of them very amusingly, something amusingly. And I like all that. George, to his great credit, has always loved that. He's loved any kind of, intelligent spin-off one way or another, whether it's comic or not. And I read about Jon Favreau. What a good idea. Brilliant director. Brilliant person to be invited into the Star Wars universe. And Disney are about to have their own streaming channel, as I'm sure you've read, so there will be a live-action television series of some kind. I know that was George's intention way back before he decided to stand down and sell the company. It also depends what stories are going to be told. When I, of course, heard about Rogue One, I thought, oh, well, I'm still in charge. And a friend of mine who counts these things told me I got about 20 mentions. But that was the strength of my non-appearance in that. But if anyone approached me about playing the Emperor again, of course I would say yes. Having said that, of course, it sounds as if they can get me for nothing, which is probably not true. But what I think about the approach is, I mean, probably you and a lot of people here, if anything happens, will find out about it before I do. So if you do hear, please let me know.
Good. All right, let's throw it that way, please.
Hi.
Hello.
My name's Cassandra, and I have always loved you and Vader more than anybody else in the Star Wars universe. But I just would really love to hear your opinion on the new villains in the new movies, and the new movies as a whole, if you want.
Yeah, I think, well, J.J. had the job, didn't he? J.J. Abrams, of revitalizing, revisiting, refreshing the saga, and he did that brilliantly, I thought, with episode 7. And then episode 8 took it in a slightly strange, different direction while still holding on to the basic Star Wars ideas. And I liked them both very much in different ways. And then the first offshoot, I think, anthology, or member of the anthology group, was Rogue One. And that was very clever too, because it was an action movie specifically, wasn't it? It was a war film, I think. And I can't wait for Solo. What a wonderful title. It's, I know that's his name, but it's so simple and so straightforward and says a lot of things. And the young actor who's been cast, I think, is a marvelous actor, and I can't wait to see what he does with the part. So it's all good in the Star Wars universe. I'm just sad I died at the end of episode 6, but you know, as you say, there may be other opportunities. But please let me know as soon as you can, because I'm 73 now, and I know he's old, you know, but I want to be able to actually move.
All right, next question.
Perfect segue for my question is, who would you like to see play a younger Palpatine if they ever do like a good backstory on that?
Yeah, I think I'd just get the makeup done. You know, Gary was a very convincing Winston Churchill. Who'd have thought it? You know, all things are possible.
Yes.
Do you have any stories about the making of Dragon Slayer?
Dragon Slayer.
Yes, that was my first, well, the only one I admit to, the first movie I made, really, first big movie, playing a young priest who thought he had the skills, or the faith, really, to combat a dragon. And it was a director who was very new to the medium, and it was his creation. He was very bright, Matthew, and it was all very exciting, full of all sorts of British actors, too. And I was pleased to play the part. And I had this line when I faced the dragon. And by the way, the dragon was a huge flamethrower in the studio. And the day I came in to face him, I noticed everybody in the studio was wearing a white suit. And they had masks handy to put on, except me, of course, because I was just there. And because I was going to be incinerated, great, they'd already taken a cast of my head, so that was going to be, you know, substituted for my real face once it had been done. But in order to get it perfect in those days, I had not to move a muscle. I was allowed to scream, but even then, Ian, could you not open your mouth so wide, you know, because we... Anyway, I was baffled like that in close-up. And so no escape if the flamethrower went, you know, a little too close. So it was a little scary. However, we did it, and it wasn't too bad. Very warm, but my hair didn't get singed, so that was good. And I had this line, which I wasn't sure about, facing the dragon. I had to say, "Unclean beast, get thee down." And I thought, well, that's rather a difficult line, and might be open to misinterpretation. So I said to the director, "Do you really want me to say that?" And he went, "Yeah, what's wrong with it?" So I said it. So if you're ever looking at the film, you'll see me somewhat reluctantly saying, "Unclean beast, get thee down." And it's been said to me as a person in other circumstances in different parts of my life.
All right, let's throw it. Who has it? Who has it? Let's throw it in the back there. There you go. Oh, we almost killed the Flash.
So has there ever been a moment where you were angry about something or angry at someone so bad that you wish you had the lightning powers you actually shot someone in real life?
Well,
yes,
know,
right now.
I would be dishonest if I answered that question in the negative. I mean, I didn't want the full power, but if I could just have a little in my pinky now and again, it solves so many problems, you know.
All right, let's throw it to the Flash there. No, right next to. There you go.
Hi, Your Imperial Highness.
Okay. Oh, very good. But why aren't you not on your knees? Thank you.
Your
you can stand
Imperial
up.
Highness.
You can stand up now. I just need obeisance once. It's fine. Yeah.
If you could have been casted as any other Star Wars character in the universe, who would you have chosen?
Yeah. God, that's a wide choice, isn't it? I suppose I've always thought that Anakin was the best part, in a way, you know, because of the journey that he went through, you know. Somebody essentially good, who had a difficult upbringing, you know, had all sorts of complications, fell in love, and it didn't go well, and so on, you know. It's a real Shakespearean arc. So I wouldn't have been remotely suitable, but that would be the part I would have gone for, yeah.
Okay, we've got time for maybe one or two more, so let's throw it back over there. Let's try to get to the kid there. Yes, Mr. Flash.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, I'm in a Flash costume.
Yes,
you certainly are.
Yes.
So, do you consider yourself like the Emperor? Like, do you get angry at people? Do you just want to sometimes bring that all out?
No. Got another
Next question, yeah. One more question. We've got one more question. Who's got a really good one? Dude, the pressure's on you.
Alrighty. Well, I hope it's good. You did mention that it was very, very challenging for the sword fights, but I will say just knowing that you finally in Part 3 finally get to hold the lightsaber, because I know in Return of the Jedi and Part 3 you're more known for the Force lightning.
Sure.
But to finally have the lightsaber in your hands, what did that feel like?
Well, the answer you expected me to say, it was thrilling, it was impressive, and so on. I said to Nick Gellert, what do I do with this thing? Where does it light up? Oh no, it doesn't light up till later. Okay, I was a little confused, but yes, of course, I liked that it was a red thing. It seemed to really suit the character. So red versus purple, and Sam, of course, had asked for purple, not expecting he was going to get it, you know. And George is a very nice surprise. You know, created a special Sam lightsaber or a mace lightsaber, which was great.
All right, let's put your hands together. Stand up for His Imperial Highness Ian McDiarmid. Thank you so much.